This week's gospel is the famous parable of the talents. It's a long story, so the version in this book is actually quite short. So I would definitely encourage you read the entire gospel reading. Read it from the bulletin, read it online, the USCCB website, wherever you can get it. Read the whole thing because it's well worth reading. There's a lot of details going on in there. There's these three different servants who are given these talents, which is a coin. It's convenient for us in English because the coin represents talents, actual abilities, right? And so this is an interesting story. There's, on the one hand, there's this dynamic where the landowner, the master, is this demanding guy, right? He even says it at some point, with the last servant. He says, "You knew that I was demanding. Why didn't you at least put that coin in a bank so I could earn interest?" Right? So there's this sense that the master is demanding. Now, is Jesus trying to say God is this demanding taskmaster? I don't think so. I think what he's trying to highlight, though, is there is a sense in which God could legitimately be demanding of us. He gave us life. He gave us talents and abilities and natural desires. He put us in a context, and he wants to see us use those things for the sake of his kingdom. And so he should be rightfully frustrated if we're just squandering our gifts, not using them. Right? And so there's that angle on this parable. God actually entrusts you with something. Right? He gave you gifts and abilities. He wants you to do something. He gave you a family. He gave you parents. He gave you kids. He gave you your natural abilities and desires. He wants to see you thrive. He wants to see you use those things, right? But then there's this key at the end of it, right, where he talks about, since you've been faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibility. Come and share in your master's joy. Right? This idea of being faithful in the small matters, right? To us, a lot of times, these gifts and abilities that God gives us, number one, we don't notice them, right? Because it's sort of like a fish swimming in water. Like, how do you explain water to a fish? It's just the stuff that's always around them. Like, if you're a person who's got a natural athletic ability, you probably don't even think about it all that often as this great ability. You just think about it, it's just the way that you are, right? So it's a small thing to us. But God's calling us to be faithful in these small things. So this week, I think the Holy Spirit is asking us, take stock. What are the small things that God has entrusted us with? The normal things, the ordinary things that we take for granted all the time. What has he given to us? He's placed us in a household, right? He's given us parents. He's given us kids. Are we faithful in those small things? Are we faithful in being a Christian family? Are we faithful in weekly mass attendance, regular family prayer, regular family faith conversations? Are you a naturally good student? If you are you using those gifts and abilities, or do you just take it for granted? You don't study for the test, you don't do the homework, you don't worry about the stuff because you figure you'll just figure it out later on. Are you kind of squandering those gifts, right? Are you a natural puzzle solver? Are you good at fixing things, putting pieces together? Are you using that for good? Are you using that to help other people? Are you using that to help your family, your friends, your colleagues at work? Right? Or do you just kind of squander it and use it whenever you feel like it and ignore it the rest of the time? Do you naturally have empathy for other people? Do you kind of feel what they're feeling, or you at least know what they're feeling? Do you take that for granted? Do you use it for bad? Do you use it for good? Right? That's what God is asking us in this parable. He's given us these gifts and abilities, and he expects us to use them for his good and for our happiness. Are we doing that? So to do that, we have to know what they are. So as a family, it's worth taking stock of. What do you notice about each other? What are everybody's natural gifts and abilities, and what are the gifts that God gave your family? Right? Maybe it's a house you inherited, or a good job, whatever it might be. What are the circumstances that you have that you take for granted, and what might God be calling you to do with those things, because he wants a return on this investment that he's made in us?